Hello, welcome to Connection. My name is Jerry Scott, and I'm here along with Pastor Phil Emerson, and to talk to you about some things that we hope will not only inspire you but help you as you try each day to live a deeper Christian life. Our program today, I think, is going to be a little bit different, Phil. And I'm just going to warn you right ahead that I think you probably ought to put your seatbelt on.
I've got my pad and my pencil, and I'm ready to take notes.
And strap yourself in, because there's going to be some turbulent air, believe me.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let me tell you, a little bit about the lesson. The lesson is called A Letter from Lou. And pastors probably don't experience this, but we lay people have two little voices that speak to us on the inside of our head, One little voice tells us the things that we should do, right? The other little voice tells us why we really can't do those things. Mm-hmm. Sort of this play between light and dark and right and wrong and so on. And I know pastors never have that problem. I mean, you always do the things that you should do. Is that right? Or
no, that's not right.
That's not right.
You know that.
Well,
okay. Don't set me up. Okay. We preachers any of us who've tried to cling on to pedestals haven't been doing real well.
Well, I knew that's the way you'd feel. Anyway, I have this little voice that speaks to me on the inside every now and then, too, and I try to push him, to the back and say, get out of here. I don't want to listen to what you have to say. But this little guy is persistent, and he not only talks to me every now and then, but he wrote me a letter the other day.
I'm interested.
Amazing. And you know what?
Are you going to share it with everyone, including the people joining us?
You know I am, because and the letter is signed by it's signed Lou Seifer. Have you ever heard that name?
No.
Lou Seifer. Oh,
Lucifer.
Aha. I knew you'd get it.
I'm slow, but I'm steady.
So what I'd like to do, if you could just kind of bear with me for a while as I read this letter. This is this Lou Seifer, this little voice that speaks on the inside of us sometimes, and he's telling me some of the things that he's told me over the years about a variety of subjects. And I thought I'd go ahead and read this, and then after we finish, we can kind of talk about it and see if this guy's all full of baloney or.
Sounds like I'm going to have a lot of things to talk about.
All right, listen to this now. It goes, Dear Jerry, I have been noting with dismay and concern your recent and growing interest in things of the so-called spirit. I want you to know that this interest of yours is temporary and shouldn't cause you too much concern. I see it every now and then in people who've reached middle age. Is he talking about me? Years ago, these interests of yours used to worry me a little bit, but I soon learned that as fast as they appeared, they disappeared. But now, as you've gotten a few years older, these spiritual excursions of yours are causing me a little concern. Not only are they appearing more and more often, but you seem to be getting more serious about them. I don't understand it. Each time as we begin to make a little progress, your eyes start to glaze over, and you drift back into that religious stuff again. One would think that you'd have caught on by now. No offense, but you always have been a slow learner. I'm sure it won't be long until you snap out of it and come back to the real world. The source of your problem, as always, lies in all that unprovable, illogical, spiritual nonsense that takes up so much of your time. It's doing nothing but confusing you and diverting your attention from the real business of your life. And that is making as much money as you can, acquiring all the stuff you can, and making sure that your family is comfortable and secure as possible. That is your job. Beyond that, nothing else really matters. Jerry, life is really quite simple. I can't believe you have so many questions about it. You do nothing but waste your time when you try to find what you call a deeper meaning for your life. There are far more productive things you could be doing with your time, that's for sure. Your persistence in these matters is causing me to spend more time with you than my schedule really allows. I am a busy person. I do have more people to worry about than just you, Even though I've been tempted to give up on you, I want you to know that as your longtime companion, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help you pass through these temporary spiritual difficulties of yours. But let me come to the real reason for this letter. Now, button your seatbelt. You got it on? Okay. Here comes the real... He said, do you remember the other day when we talked about church? Do you remember what I said to you? Do you? You should have seen the look on your face when I said, I think church is fine. It's a great place to go on Sunday mornings. You can see and talk with friends. And you can listen to music. You can let somebody else watch the kids for a while. Church is great. But the important thing, Jerry, is you have to keep it all in the proper perspective. You have to know how to separate the wheat from the chaff. You know, that's what they like to say. I went back into my file the other day and found some notes from some meetings we've had over the years relating to church. I think now is a good time to review them with you. Here are 9 important things I want you to always remember about the church. First, outsiders. The church building is for church people and church activities. Once you start letting in outsiders, especially minorities and people who don't fit the social profile of your church, you're asking for trouble. Church people aren't going to like it. Before you know it, the church will begin to change. Social groups will never be the same because they'll be infiltrated with outsiders, with strangers that'll begin to upset the way you've always done things. For the church to remain as it is, we must protect it from outsiders and make sure that the members of one social group do not mix with those of another. We have to stand guard over what we have and who we are. Second, get ready, ministers.
I knew you were going to get it.
Try to look religious, attentive, and above all innocent during the sermon. Ministers love to get personal, and it's important you realize that none of the examples that he preaches in his sermons will pertain to you. Ministers are basically well-meaning folk who by and large do an excellent job of keeping the church running on an even keel. They do have one basic problem, however. They don't live in the real world like you and I. You know what I mean. This is a result of their training, which teaches them to become experts in 5 basic areas. 1, raising money. 2, making people feel guilty. 3, making people laugh. 4, making people cry. And 5, getting people to work on committees. Points 1 and 5 are heavily stressed in their training. Third, the Bible. Jerry, always remember that the Bible was written 1900 years ago by a group of people walking around in sandals, animal skins, and robes. Ministers love to tell you that there's a connection between the way you live today and the way they lived. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. The rules the Bible contains may have been relevant 1900 years ago, but a lot of things have changed since then, and frankly, they really don't hold a lot of meaning for us who live today in the modern world. It is a great book, however, for children, because it's filled with a lot of imaginative stories about giants and kings and whales and shepherds and a star that led a group of wealthy politicians to a stable. This is great stuff for kids, but for adults, its teachings really aren't very practical because they're not based on fact. They're not logical, and they don't work in the real world as it exists today. So read the Bible, by all means, read it, but whatever you do, don't take it too seriously. Fourth, money. If you give any money to the church, and you should give a little every now and then, the church is a business after all, make sure that you know where it's going. Some churches have acquired the nasty habit of sending your hard-earned money off to, excuse the expression, God knows where, but where it's probably wasted or otherwise misused. Another point, sooner or later, those ministers will try to talk you into giving 10% or more of your income to the church. Now, if you had money, that'd be one thing. but it's tough enough to make ends meet as it is. Now, one final point is this. One final point about giving. If you buy something and donate it to the church, it's important to remember that it still belongs to you. So make sure you kind of keep tabs on it and watch it. Fifth, keep church in church. When you're in church, it's important to act religious. How you do it's your business, but the important thing is that you do it. On the other hand, when you're not in church, don't act religious. Socially, it's the kiss of death, and will give you the reputation of a religious fanatic or an oddball, and it'll only hurt you socially, and it'll hurt your business career as well. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if the boss saw you pray before making an important business decision or before a meal? He'd think you had a screw loose. 6, faith. Faith is a great thing to talk about and to pretend you have, but sooner or later you have to come back to reality. Whatever you do, Jerry, and I can't stress this point too hard, don't fall for any of that faith stuff. It's just not logical. It's not real. Always remember the rule I taught you, Jerry. If you can't see it, if you can't feel it, if you can't taste it or touch it, it's not real, and you should avoid it at all costs. Faith is the enemy of progress. If you want to get somewhere in this world, plan your work and work your plan and leave nothing to chance. That is the way to make things happen in the real world. 7th, work. Stay busy. It's important that you keep your mind and hands as busy as possible. I think you'll find there are all kinds of opportunities to do this in most churches. As you're looking for an area of involvement, try to find one where conversation and study are the focal points. Remember, the busier you stay, the less likely you are to actually go out and do something that could get you into trouble. 8th, prayer. Let the ministers do it. That's what they're getting paid for. Besides, it takes training, and only years of theological experience would enable you to pray with grace and elegance. 9th, music. The rule here, Jerry, is simple. Never give any thought to the words of the hymns you sing. I list this point last because by and large most churches follow this rule already. If I may be allowed a brief personal comment here, I must say that it warms my heart on Sunday mornings when I see the church parking lot fill up with shiny new cars, and then listen to the congregation made up of well-dressed, well-fed, successful people who are all building up their bank accounts, looking forward to a successful future, solemnly intoning, "Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold." They understand and practice the give no thought to the words rule. Then I lean in closer so that not a single note will spill from my ears as they raise their voices together singing, "Earthly pleasures vainly call me. Nothing worldly shall enthrall me." But I must say my heart leaps with delight because I know these people have not been fooled. They have not been led astray. They have their priorities in the right place. They do not believe the words they sing. But it makes me happiest as I look at the earth from afar on Sunday and hear the entire Christian community singing as of one voice, "We are not divided. All one body we, one in hope and doctrine, one in charity." Pay no attention to the words you sing, Jerry. They will only confuse you and get you into trouble. Jerry, remember these 9 points and the other important bits of advice I've written to you in this letter. I know they will help get you out of your present spiritual fantasies and back in to the real world. I'm sure I've repeated things here we've talked about many times before, but I found that through experience that stressing them over and over and over helps me cure thousands, even millions of people who have experienced problems similar to yours. Well, don't be worried. I want you to know that I'll be here, close beside you. I'll never leave you alone with, this is the part that kind of scares me a little bit here, with the warmest wishes possible. I remain, as always, Lou Seifer. You can unbuckle your belt now.
That is amazing. And what a delightful way, Jerry, you have introduced us to some very important things about being a Christian and about being in the church. Let me ask, for you, as you share with us this delightful letter about from Lucifer, what does this letter help you understand about the Dark One, about evil itself?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think that one of the things that it constantly reminds me of is that that his presence is there all the time. I mean, once you become a Christian and once you try to follow the teachings of Christ and make that decision, I mean, that doesn't mean that you're never going to be tempted and you're never going to hear this voice on the inside, still trying to fight you and rob you of what it means to live a Christian life.
So many Christians have the notion that Lucifer is some monster that lurks around, and somebody that spoils your cake when it doesn't rise or won't let your car turn on when it,
He may be.
Well, he may be. Lucifer, I think, must love that kind of talk, because here, in this sense of which, as you say, the inner voice that simply whispers in your ear, now come on. Mm-hmm. That's not the way it is. You don't believe those words. Mm-hmm. And how carefully he robs the joy and the adventure,
yes,
and the faith from us.
Yeah, and you know what it is, and we should mention that this letter is really the first half of a two-part program. There's the letter from Lucifer to me, and then the next connection program we'll do my letter back to Lucifer. But the thing about this letter, and the thing about all the things that he seems to say, is they're very logical things. They are very you can't give this much money. I mean, you know how difficult it is in today's world just to make ends meet. I mean, you just can barely make your bills now. And if you pay this or give this, you're going to come up on the short end of the stick. And that's logical,
Oh, I think so. And let's take a look at his attack on your life, on my life, on all of our lives. Let's take a look at the fundamentals of the attack. What really are they? And I've kind of taken some notes as you shared the letter. It seems to me that the first line of attack is to remember that you're first.
Yes.
That is, the first line of his attack is to make sure that the dominating principle of life is me first. Mm-hmm. And then after me, maybe my family. I'm a pretty good Joe if I extend that family first, Mm-hmm. So it's me first and then family first. Mm-hmm. But don't ever get beyond that. Mm-hmm. That has to be a principle to life.
I heard a very interesting thing on the radio here the other day driving into Chicago. The minister was talking about this, about people who are the center of their world, and he said he was counseling with a person one time, and he said, "You know what you need?" The person said, "What?" He said, "You need a Copernican revolution." I'm saying to myself, what the heck is this guy talking about? Copernican revolution. I'm a little bit of an astronomer, and I know that Copernicus was the first guy that really figured out that everything didn't revolve around the Earth.
That's right.
Things kind of revolve around the sun, and that was a shocking moment in the intellect of people. And I think it's a major step in the life of a Christian to figure out that the world does not revolve around me.
But it revolves around the Son.
It does.
The Son of God.
Doesn't it, though?
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
His second thing, it seems to me, from your letter, is after he gets you convinced that you should be number one, you need to protect yourself at all times, he then wants to attack any notion of a presence beyond what you can taste, see, and feel. Mm-hmm. He wants to say now, because God always leaves us this inkling that there's more. He always leaves us the little spark within us that invites us to charity and to service. And Lucifer must attack those things, directly, because he knows they're real. I mean, and so he enters in our life in a way that tries to say, look, faith is nonsense. The world is what's right. Why?
And that's easy to believe.
Well, yes, it is. How many times within the church do we talk about, Pastor Phil, there's faith, but then there's business.
That's right. Oh, see, now you're talking about my subject. I mean, this is the subject that that really concerns me. And I know we've talked about this.
We've named this whole show around this very issue, the connection.
Exactly so.
Making the connection in our life between life and faith.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I think if he who cannot claim, or who will not be willing to admit that Satan gets on us. We call him by a lot of different names. I prefer kind of the dark one, but whatever name you call him, gets on us not so much with a big club, but with the little voice.
Right.
And he knows just exactly where we're vulnerable, and we're vulnerable at me first. We're vulnerable at there's not enough here. And we're vulnerable when I don't see. Could that be why our Lord said, "Blessed are you who believe and yet have never seen"?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the church and ministers. You knew I had to make some little bit of responsibility.
I knew it wasn't going to escape him at all. So now you're going to ask me a tough question. Now that's not fair.
No. I think I want to start out and make a response, and then. But I do want to ask you a question: is how right is Lucifer about the church, in your mind?
Oh, I knew that was going to be a tough question. Well, let me just go back and just take another quick look and see what he has to say.
You'll be thinking about that too.
How right
is Lucifer about the church? Is your church like our church? Are we practicing his messages of no outsiders, no change? It's got to be protected too,
I honestly feel that that's a certain part of our human, the human baggage we carry with us, confirms some of these things. So I'd say that, he does have a point, and, unfortunately, it is the way it is.
Why is it hard for us to change? If I could, he gets us at a real important point, doesn't he? The church has been a special place for us. It's been a holy place. It's been a place where I've seen my children baptized, or maybe I've buried my mom and dad. It's been a place where I've sung these old hymns of faith for me. And then sometimes when life changes and we want to try something new, it doesn't feel good. It feels like an attack.
That's right. Like they're ripping part of us away to change
That's right. And I have some compassion for that. But I think I think your letter points out that often the devil makes use of that. And when we just get so locked in to wanting it always to be like it was, how many of our churches, how many people do you know that when you talk about church, talk about the glory days? Yes.
The good old days.
The good old days. The glory days of God are today.
That's right.
Tomorrow, even more better, tomorrow.
That's not to say there weren't any good old days.
That's right.
I mean, there were. But the really good days are from here on forward, don't you think?
I believe so. I think that's what Jesus wanted us to understand. What must a church look like that is open and really living in a way that is not trying to protect its own life? And you have me there. Minister, and it leads us right into the one about ministers, doesn't it? Ministers are too often called and trained to protect the church. And protect its assets and protect its physical structure.
Exactly.
And organize its committees and keep the appearance going. But we're not well trained enough to be risk takers, adventurers, pushing out.
Yeah.
You know, I fault myself for that, and I fault my brothers and sisters in the ministry for that. It's ours to change. Nobody makes us be this way. Sometimes I think it's too easy, too easy to care for the past.
The thing that frustrates me about this a little bit is whether we like it or not. I mean, the church today, the building is a building that needs attention. It needs money. It needs administration, and so on. And I'm uncomfortable with the fact that so often, you know, so much of a pastor is called to be a businessman, an administrator, you know, a person that handles little, you know, office kinds of things, rather than the great commission that Jesus gave to pastors, you know, to be shepherds of the flock. I mean, everything else is pale, you know, but because of what we've set up with our buildings and you know, for whatever reason they're here, you know, you can't do that. And
we've got, you know, there's the certain part of the ministerial life has got to be administration. Unfortunately, Lucifer's right. Certain part of it has to be entertainment. And he does have us there. And some of us, we go over the line a little bit there. But I would want to say, and I'm not going to name any.
I was hoping you wouldn't.
You know, because I even, if any of you have seen me preach, you may think that of me. But I believe that he's wrong. I think he wants us to believe that about pastors and ministers. But I invite you to know there's more to ministers, men and women who are called by God than that. God does call a rare and gifted bunch of people. And we're not perfect, you know. And that's honest. But we are unique. And if people need to get to know their pastors better.
How can they do that?
All they got to do is call them up on the phone and say, let's go out for coffee. I mean, it's just that easy. You know, pastors are like anybody else. I think they respond to the invitation, and they're all hungry to know the people that they're charged to serve. We're out of time. You got too much in this letter, Jerry. We haven't even got the music. Singing those words and not, boy, you know, we need to, you know, that's amen. And Lucifer's right. Prayer and work and faith and money. We haven't even got to the M word in church yet. And I heard our beeper. Yeah, we're going to have to say goodbye. I hope you'll join us next time to hear Jerry's response. That's what I'm going to be interested in. Taking notes to see that you got everything in there I put in there. And maybe you'll want to join us next Wednesday night for another connection as we hear Jerry give his response to Lucifer about Lucifer's challenge to him. Not a challenge, more like a whisper to, hey, don't get too involved. Join us next time, won't you? Thank you for listening. Thank you, Jerry.
Oh, good night.
Good night.